In this episode of the Fit After 30 show, I'm going to give you my very potent 3-step process that takes my own personal goals from might happen to a dead cert. Boom, yes team, what is happening? Hopefully you are doing good. I cannot believe Christmas is right around the corner. Hopefully you've done your shopping. I need to speed up with that and really hope that you're enjoying the festivities and just starting to wind down now as we close off 2023. If you're brand spanking new to me and my channel, my name is Sharif, as I say, guiding men and women in their 30s and their 40s to an absolutely incredible physique transformation via muscle building, fat loss, and different mindset upgrades in which you're gonna need to really transform your physique for the long term in this new paradigm of your life. We make sure that we do so without sacrificing work, family, or indeed social life to make sure that the plan complements everything else that you've got going around with the multiple different plates you've got to spin, rather than now complicating it or getting you to follow something which you no longer can do given your new roles and responsibilities. If that sounds like something which you're interested in, do consider hitting that subscribe button, that little bell notification. Follow me on all the socials. I'm most active on Instagram at Sharif Lawton. Looking forward to chatting with you there. Now, when it comes to goal setting, when it comes to realigning, recommitting, and just reflecting, this time of the year is so impactful and so important to do so. And I think after all the festivities and all the celebrations have kind of wound down, and just before we get into the mayhem and the chaos and the kind of rigidity of like, right, straight back into a new year and all the craziness that comes with that and just slam back into routine, I think it's really important just to kind of reflect, as I say, and take stock and be like, right, what kind of year have I had? Did I actually achieve the things in which I wanted to? Did I achieve more than I wanted to? Did I overachieve? And what could I do better leading into 2024 and the new year? You see, most people obviously have some form of physique goal or weight loss goal or body composition goal or health goal in which they're trying to achieve. And some people achieve them very, very well. But if you actually look at the stats and the facts and the figures, a lot of people don't. And what tends to happen, as it probably comes as no surprise to you, is the fact that motivation or the willingness or the want to do something different to your physique is almost certainly at its peak, probably in February. You might think January, but actually people are still poor, eating quality street, and they really haven't got their minds into the new year until February. So it gets to February and then people are like, right, I really need to sort my shit out. And then they might look at a personal trainer, or they might look at getting a Peloton, or they might look at joining a boot camp, or maybe even a brand spanking new gym membership, whatever it may be. And they might do it for a few weeks and then it kind of just falls off the wayside and other things get in the way, and life gets busy and work gets busy and family gets busy and socials get busy. And actually this kind of pattern tends to repeat itself. So what I think is part of the reason why this more often than not fails is because, number one, people do not know how to set goals properly. And number two, the way in which the internet is full of goal setting practices in which you could probably find on Google, they're very outdated and they're very corporate and they're very boring. So in fact, I'm just going to give you probably 3 paradigm shifts, or at the very least 3 questions in which you can ask yourself to make sure that when you are setting goals for 2024, when it comes to your physique, be that wanting to slap on new muscle tissue, be that wanting to loosen body fat, that you actually have these 3 things lined up. Because like I say, any time in my personal life, in my professional life, when it comes to my physique, when it comes to business, when it comes to relationships, whatever it may be, if it's serious enough to me, I will ask myself and I will go through this 3-step process, which always allows me to really know if I'm going to hit my goals or not, because the clarity I get on the other side of these 3 questions are absolutely insane. So without any further ado, let me give them to you and let's get you thinking differently about how to set goals in 2024 so that you can actually reach them, rather than I said it, I didn't really hit it, let's move on. So the first paradigm shift I'm going to give you is that of the 2 C's, consequences and clarity. Now, let's start with clarity. So do you actually know how to reach your goals? And before you say yes, of course I do, Sharif, I'm just going to eat less and move more. If it's muscle building, I'm just going to train a little bit harder in the gym. Just have a little think about that, because the very definition of madness, as Albert Einstein would say, is doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're expecting a different result. The reality is, what you probably think that you should be doing in order to get to your goals, there might be a bit of a gap as to what you actually need to be doing in order to get there. Again, I coach a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds, and when I actually ask about the approaches that they have taken or they've tried to take in order to get their body back or what have you, oftentimes it's so crazy that they're just thinking about their 20-year-old self doing it, and they're not paying respect to the fact that they can't do that anymore. They can't just diet themselves into the ground. They cannot just do all the cardio in the world. They cannot live off, 5 hours less or sleep and all the stimulants to keep them going. They cannot be in the gym 2 hours a day, yet they're trying to follow a plan and, follow a ship which is basically already sailed. And so before you very quickly say to yourself that I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. Trust me, I hear that phrase a lot. just sit with that and be like, well, do I actually know what to do? And yes, the internet is full of information about exactly what to do to move yourself forward. But when it comes to you and your own personal situation, are you clear on how many workouts you need to do per week? Are you clear on what you should be doing in the gym? Are you clear on the progression model in which you should follow in order so that you don't get injured, but you do progress? What about steps? Are you clear about, do you need to do them? Do you need to be tracking them? If so, how many? What about food? Should you be tracking food? Should you be not tracking food? What about family meals? What about meals out? What about client meals? What about high protein? What about low protein? What about, do I need a MyFitnessPal account? There's a lot that goes into it. And so to not to have the humility to just take a step back and be like, do I actually know what I need to do to get into shape? And just assume that you do is a fool's errand. And you need to make sure that you actually do. And obviously the quickest way to get there is by hiring the expertise of a professional who can customize the plan for you. But even if you're not in the camp of being able to afford to do so or what have you, just make sure that the plan on paper is actually going to fit in with all the other bits and pieces that you've got going on in your life. Because guess what? You're not a professional athlete and neither am I. You've got family, you've got work, you've got socials, you've got a whole bunch of different things. So if you're looking at that plan, thinking of what you need to do to get into shape, and then you're looking at your schedule and thinking there's a massive mismatch here, well, then we're off to a losing battle. So number one, get clarity on exactly the action steps you need to take across nutrition, training, lifestyle, and mindset in order to move you forward. And number two, the other flip side of the coin to that is, do you have crystal clear consequences in your mind about what happens to you and indeed your loved ones? Because this journey is not just about you, if you reach your goals versus if you flop. We as humans are typically driven by either pain or pleasure, pain oftentimes being the bigger driver. So let's say, for instance, you set the goals of wanting to drop 20 kilos of body fat, wanting to fit into size large clothes again, wanting to get your blood pressure down, wanting to improve cholesterol, wanting to have your blood markers across the board improve. Okay, great. That's all well and good. What happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if that flops? Like, get very clear on what will happen if you don't follow through. On a surface level, obviously you lose a bit of confidence and trust with yourself and your ability to actually get the job done. But I think deeper than that, well, what happens if you continue down that slippery slope? That is going to have a direct consequence in your life and indeed your loved one's life. And if you're not clear about what that consequence is, then you will continue to bury your head in the sand about it rather than actually tackle it head on. And on the flip side to that, when we go to the pleasure drivers, well, what are the consequences of actually fitting into the clothes in which you want? What are the consequences of actually feeling like a 10 out of 10 when you're strutting your stuff on the beach on holiday? What are the consequences of actually being able to walk into a room, light it up with your chin up, your chest out, your shoulders back, in terms of your ability to have different job prospects, your ability to have different conversations, your ability to have different relationships? Why does that matter to you? Get very clear on the pluses and the minuses of you following through versus not. Paradigm shift number two is the fact that deadlines drive decisions, the 3Ds. With this, it's now a case of realizing that a goal without a deadline is just going to be fumbling along in the wind until it doesn't really happen. And this is something in which we get crystal clear on with our 23 Lean private coaching clients. We figure out how much body fat they've got to lose or how much muscle they want to gain. We look at their timeframes. We reverse engineer a plan. I give them a realistic goal to hit in terms of week-to-week KPIs and metrics, and then they know exactly where they should be. Because without that and just taking a lifestyle approach to dieting, all that happens is it doesn't really matter if you don't make progress for 1 week, if you get invited for a bunch of meals out, if you have a few too many drinks, if you miss a few gym sessions, if you don't hit your steps, if you don't get to bed on time, because you've always got next week, and you've always got next week, and you've always got next week. And whilst on one hand, that's okay because you've got a large degree of flexibility, that same flexibility can bite you on the arse if you never really have a deadline in order to get shit done. And this is now not about crash dieting, or this is not about, losing a stone in 2 weeks or anything crazy like that. Do make sure you're being realistic with it, but without a deadline in terms of what you want to achieve by when, I guarantee you are setting yourself up for failure and it won't happen. And I think actually a large part on why people don't do this is because they're scared. They're scared of, if they publicly say, hey, I'm going to be this weight, this body composition, this level of body fat, whatever it may be, by X date, and they don't reach it, they don't follow through, then they're going to feel a little bit silly. But guess what? If they don't tell anyone and they don't commit to the process, then that's a surefire way of failing before you've even started. So set a realistic deadline. For those of you looking at fat loss in the new year, which 99% of you will be, again, you know that I like that proxy of 0.5 to 1% of total body weight loss on a weekly basis to make sure that you're losing maximal fat mass and minimal lean mass. And lastly, we've got focusing on the damn process rather than the outcome. And let me talk to you about this real quick. You see, we have something inside 23 Lean called lead and lag measures. Now, let's say, for instance, you onboarded with myself and we had a conversation. You're going to be a great fit for what we do. We signed you up for coaching and away we go. You then tell me that, hey, Sharif, my goal is to get into this clothes size or dress size. My goal is to be this confidence level out of 10. My goal is to have the ability to have this type of job prospect. My goal is to shed 10, 20 kilos of body fat off me. My goal is to really improve this lift in the gym and make sure that I'm benching X by Y, whatever it may be, okay? There is always going to be a lag between you telling me that you want to achieve that and me guiding you towards that goal. Might be 4 weeks, might be 6 weeks, might be 10 weeks, might be 6 months, might be a year, depending on what the goal is and obviously where your starting point is. So there's always going to be that lag. But rather than think of the lag and rather than think of just the outcome, what if we focus on the lead? What are the things in which you have to do on a day-to-day to get you there? And again, inside 23 Lean, we call this our foundational 4. And they typically move across nutrition, training, sleep and stress management, and then making sure your cardio or your steps are where they need to be. Because if you can on a day-to-day focus on what you have to do to move yourself forward just for that 24-hour period, you realize that you can't actually do more than that. You cannot make that end goal come to you any faster. And the reality is, just by focusing on the things in which you have to do on a day-to-day basis and getting very, very good at that, that will harness that relentless consistency in which you need to reach those goals. And also, as I say, you can't make those lag metrics happen to you any faster. So it's more important to focus on the lead, because I guarantee you, if you can wake up each and every day and have a very small checklist of the things in which you have to do to move yourself forward, and it is a small checklist, and just do them and not focus on, am I there yet? How many more pounds have I got to go? The scale still says this, and just do them irrespective of that short-term ROI. I guarantee you the goal is going to come to you far quicker than if you're constantly treating it as like a watching paint dry sort of experiment, or watching a microwavable minute, or maybe a minute when you're doing a plank. All those things, they move very, very slowly, and people can get so disheartened because they think they've got this massive mountain to climb. They can't see the end goal, and the reality is they're just focusing on the lag metrics and not the lead metrics. So if you get focused on the process, the very things in which you have to do to move yourself forward each and every day, then I guarantee you, number one, you're going to find so much more pleasure in the journey because you're going to pick up small wins and acknowledge them along the way. But number two, those lag goals, the main thing in which you want, is going to come to you so much quicker because ironically, you're not as focused on that. Hopefully this makes sense. So listen, team, when you are setting goals, make sure you've got those 3 things absolutely locked in for 2024. Number one, the consequences and the clarity as to what you need to do and what's going to happen if you do or you don't moving forward. Number 2, a deadline. Deadlines drive decisions. And if you don't have a deadline, then you're going to be too lackadaisical with the approach, and essentially you're going to get nowhere fast. And lastly, number 3, making sure that we are process focused rather than consistently being outcome focused, and watch how much pleasurable the journey becomes versus always looking in the mirror and thinking, when am I going to be fit, etc., etc. As always, if you want a hand with this stuff, if you want the shortcut to your success, our one-to-one coaching spots are going to be reopening in January. They're closed for right now, but also the quickest, fastest, and indeed most affordable way to work with myself and the team is to jump on our early bird list for SL Slice. I'm going to leave the little link below in the description, and all you're going to be doing is signing up for more information and indeed a 35% discount code when we do go live, so that you get first dibs on our brand spanking new coaching program launching February 2024. Team, if we don't speak beforehand, have an incredible Christmas, an incredible new year. Set some big, hairy, chunky goals. Set some goals which make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, because that is really what's going to move you forward. And make sure you use this 3-step process to make sure you nail them. I'll talk to you very soon in a bit.